What if I told you rock's ultimate working man's anthem was born from a stolen Beatles riff, an emergency onstage improvisation, and a piano legend that was completely fabricated? Bachman-Turner Overdrive turned Taking Care of Business into a global phenomenon, but the same song that made them legends buried a family in decades of lawsuits, betrayal, and a brother forced to fight over royalties tied to his own creation. This is the crushing true story of Bachman-Turner Overdrive. In May 1970, Randy Bachman stood at the absolute summit of Canadian rock and roll. The Guess Who had just conquered America with American Woman, a chart-topping anthem that made them the biggest band their country had ever produced. And then, at the height of that triumph, Bachman walked away. The reasons ran deeper than most fans ever knew. Bachman had converted to the Mormon faith, and the disciplined, clean living path he had chosen collided head-on with the hard partying culture of his bandmates. Severe gallbladder problems added a physical toll to the spiritual one, so he packed up and retreated home to Winnipeg, determined to build something entirely his own. The industry did not welcome his exit with open arms. Bachman later recalled being branded a lunatic and a loser, with insiders swearing that nobody in the business would ever work with him again. He answered that judgment the only way he knew how. He recruited his younger brother Robbie on drums and brought back former Guess Who vocalist Chad Allen, forming a country rock outfit called Brave Belt. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It went nowhere. The lighter, gentler sound failed to connect with anyone, and Bachman found himself staring down the same silence that had swallowed 100 other hopeful bands before him. Eventually, Bachman crossed paths with bass player and singer Fred Turner, whose massive gravel-hewn voice gave the project a much harder edge. The chemistry was instant, but recognition was not. Brave Belt was dropped by their label, and the demo tape that followed was rejected again and again. The band stood on the edge of giving up entirely, weighing the idea of ordinary day jobs, when a record executive named Charlie Falk happened to be clearing off his desk. He was sweeping a stack of demo tapes into the trash when Brave Belt's tape caught his attention. He picked it up, recognized Bachman's name, and pressed play. Bach loved what he heard. He signed them on the spot, but he insisted on one condition. The name had to go. A joking suggestion floated around the office, something about Bachman-Turner Overweight, a nod to the musicians' sturdy builds. They laughed it off and instead combined their surnames with a single word lifted from a trucker's magazine spotted at an Ontario truck stop: Overdrive. Bachman-Turner Overdrive was born, not from ambition or image, but from flannel shirts, cold prairie winters, and men who understood exactly what it meant to grind for a living. That authenticity would soon become their entire identity. It would also become the seed of everything that eventually tore them apart. Long before Bachman-Turner Overdrive existed, there was a forgotten song sitting in a drawer. Back in 1968, while still a member of the Guess Who, Randy Bachman had written a track called White Collar Worker. He brought it to lead singer Burton Cummings, hoping to add it to the band's catalog. Cummings turned him down flat. The chord structure sounded too close to the Beatles' paperback writer, and Cummings wanted no part of a lawsuit. "Forget it," he told Bachman. "We'll get sued by the Beatles." So the song sat, unused and unheard, for 5 years. Then came a night in Vancouver in 1973 that changed everything. Bachman-Turner Overdrive was midway through a multi-nightclub run when Fred Turner's voice gave out completely, blown ragged from night after night of gravel-toned shouting. With a room full of dancing fans and no singer left to carry the set, Bachman had to improvise. He told the band to lock into a simple, repeating progression, 3 chords cycling over and over, while he dug through his memory for something to fill the space. He pulled out the old White Collar Worker lyrics, but instead of the original hook, he dropped in a phrase he had heard a local disc jockey use on the radio that very week: "Taking Care of Business." The crowd exploded. The reaction was so overwhelming that the band kept the improvised jam running for another 10 minutes. riding the energy of a room that had just witnessed something being born in real time. Bachman knew immediately that they had stumbled onto something enormous. When the band finally got into the studio to record the track for their second album, Bachman felt something was missing. The song needed a rollicking, boogie-woogie piano line to push it over the top. For decades afterward, he told a colorful story about how that piano part came to be, claiming a random pizza delivery boy wandered into the session, offered to play, nailed the part in one take, and disappeared into the night without so much as leaving his name. It made for a great story. It also was not true. The real pianist was a professional musician named Norman Durkee, who happened to be recording jingles in the studio next door. A sound engineer pulled him in to help, and because Durkee had only a few spare moments to give, he laid down the piano part in one single, unedited take. The result gave the song the extra bounce it needed. Durkee was no anonymous drifter. He was a Berklee College of Music graduate who had worked extensively as a session musician and keyboard player. The truth was stranger and far more interesting than the myth Bachman had spent decades telling. When Bachman-Turner Overdrive 2 was released in December of 1973, nobody in the band could have predicted what was coming. Powered by relentless FM radio airplay of Let It Ride and Takin Care of Business, the album climbed all the way to number 4 on the American charts. Overnight, 4 unglamorous Canadian musicians in flannel and beards became arena headliners. The song's reach extended further than anyone expected. Elvis Presley had already been using TCB, short for Taking Care of Business, as part of his own personal motto, and the phrase fit perfectly with the working man image BTO was building. Randy Bachman later recalled meeting Elvis in Las Vegas and hearing how much Presley liked the song, which only added to the mythic weight around it, for millions of American listeners tuning into their local FM stations. This was the sound of the mid-70s itself. Muscle cars idling at stoplights, factory shifts ending at dusk, a blue-collar pride that needed no apology and no explanation. Bachman-Turner Overdrive had become the voice of an entire working generation, and radio programmers across the country could not press the needle down fast enough. Concert promoters scrambled to book them into venues that had once seemed impossibly large for a band that had spent years grinding through empty Canadian clubs. 4 men who had been rejected time and again were suddenly filling arenas built for the biggest acts in the world. But that kind of velocity changes people. It changes how they see each other and what they believe they are owed. But success on this scale came with a cost that nobody in the band had budgeted for. The touring schedule became relentless, stacking city after city with almost no time to breathe. And underneath the platinum records and the sold-out arenas, the pressure was beginning to expose fractures that had been quietly forming since the very beginning. As Bachman-Turner Overdrive crossed the continent night after night, the sheer intensity of their success began pulling at threads the band had never fully secured. Randy Bachman, still deeply committed to his Mormon faith, enforced a strict, disciplined code of conduct on the road. No drugs, no alcohol. A clean, controlled environment that stood in stark contrast to nearly every other major rock act of the era. For a band whose contemporaries included groups famous for turning hotel corridors into war zones, Bachman-Turner Overdrive lived an almost monastic existence by comparison. Drummer Robbie Bachman later admitted that the group's idea of a wild night after a sold-out show amounted to finding a hotel bed with a coin-operated massage feature and watching television in exhausted silence. Not everyone could live inside those walls. Tim Bachman, Randy's other younger brother, struggled to adhere to the strict code Randy had imposed on the group. The friction eventually became unworkable, and Tim was dismissed from the band shortly after the release of their second album. He was replaced by guitarist Blair Thornton, a gifted player from a Vancouver band called Crosstown Bus, whose arrival raised the group's musicianship but did nothing to repair the growing emotional distance at its center. The deeper wound was harder to see from the outside. Randy Bachman controlled the band's finances. He controlled the touring decisions. He controlled which songs made it onto each record and who sang lead on them. What had once felt like a democratic brotherhood built on shared struggle was slowly hardening into something closer to a one-man operation, with the rest of the group increasingly reduced to the role of hired hands in a project that carried their names but answered to only one voice. Fred Turner and Robbie Bachman watched this shift happen in real time, and resentment began to take root. It was a quiet resentment, the kind that does not explode in a single dramatic night, but instead accumulates, show after show, decision after decision, until it becomes impossible to ignore. There was a bitter irony buried inside all of it. The band's entire public identity rested on the idea of shared struggle, four working men grinding it out together on equal footing. That image had sold millions of records, but behind the tour bus windows, the reality looked nothing like the brotherhood the posters promised. The men who had built that sound together were beginning to feel like employees inside their own creation. By late 1976, the tension inside Bachman-Turner Overdrive had been building for years, and it finally reached its breaking point during the making of their sixth studio album, Freeways. Critics had begun grumbling that the band's boogie rock formula was growing stale, and rather than retreat from that criticism, Randy Bachman decided to lean directly into reinvention. He wanted jazz chords, he wanted string arrangements, he wanted horns. Fred Turner and Robbie Bachman pushed back hard. This was not the band their fans had fallen in love with. It was a betrayal, in their eyes, of the blue-collar identity that had carried them to superstardom in the first place. But Randy's creative control gave him the final word. He wrote nearly every song on the record himself and claimed the majority of the lead vocals, pushing the men who had built the sound alongside him to the margins of their own album. The recording sessions became an agonizing experience for everyone involved. Fred Turner, whose thunderous voice had defined the band's biggest hits, found himself reduced to the role of a supporting player on a record that bore his own band's name. He later put it plainly. Since Randy controlled the direction of the project, everything moved on Randy's timetable. It finally came to a head. Turner's frustration showed up in a place fans would not fully understand for years. When it came time to shoot the album cover, Turner refused to allow a straightforward, face-forward photograph of himself to be used. Instead, he insisted on being shot strictly in profile, a silent protest captured in permanent print, a visual statement that he had been pushed to the sidelines of the band he had helped build with his own voice. When Turner finally heard the finished, sequenced album, he delivered his verdict to the band's manager without hesitation. This did not sound like Bachman-Turner Overdrive anymore. So what was the point of carrying on? In March of 1977, Randy Bachman officially quit the band he had founded, named, and financed through his own leadership and publishing power. The partnership that had powered one of the biggest working-class rock anthems in American history was over. After Randy Bachman's departure, the remaining members purchased the rights to the letters that spelled their name and pressed forward as Bachman-Turner Overdrive without him. But without Randy's instinct for a hook, their commercial fortunes collapsed almost immediately, and the band that had once filled arenas found itself fading from the charts entirely. Takin Care of Business, meanwhile, took on a strange and ironic second life of its own. In 1994, the office supply retailer Office Depot licensed the song for a national advertising campaign, using its driving rhythm to celebrate the industriousness of small business owners across America. There was just one problem. The lyrics said the exact opposite. Randy Bachman's original words were a wink at slacking off, a celebration of sleeping through the alarm clock and ignoring the 9-to-5 grind entirely. "I love to work at nothing all day," the song boasted, a line written as a tribute to the easy, work-free lifestyle of touring musicians. Not the disciplined office worker it was suddenly being used to motivate. a song about doing as little as possible, had become the unofficial anthem of American corporate ambition. The bitterness within the Bachman family only deepened from there. In 1983, Randy and Fred Turner agreed to attempt a reunion, but younger brother Robbie Bachman refused to take part unless he received an equal share of the publishing royalties, a demand Randy rejected outright. In response, Robbie and Blair Thornton filed a lawsuit against Randy over the use of the band's name and its familiar gear-shaped logo, both of which Randy had legally sold to them when he left in 1977. Robbie and Blair won. In one of the more painful ironies in classic rock history, Randy Bachman found himself legally obligated to pay royalties to his own younger brother simply to keep performing under the name of the band he had personally founded, financed, and built from nothing. Think about what that meant. A man who had walked away from the Guess Who at the peak of their fame, who had built an entirely new band from the wreckage of that decision, who had written the songs that filled stadiums and sold millions of records, now had to pay for the privilege of using his own creation's name. The very success that Takin Care of Business had generated became the weapon his own family used against him in a courtroom. The legacy of Bachman-Turner Overdrive rests on a bittersweet contradiction. Takin Care of Business remains one of the most recognizable and financially valuable rock songs ever written, a permanent fixture of classic rock radio, sporting arenas, and television commercials. And yet the very success of that song helped fracture the family and creative bonds that had allowed the band to exist in the first place. Decades of legal battles and personal estrangement kept the Bachman brothers largely apart for most of their adult lives. When his younger brothers, Robbie and Tim, passed away within a short span of each other, Randy Bachman took to social media to reflect on what remained. He wrote that he had lost two brothers and that the family history they shared could never be replaced. He signed off with a simple farewell to Timmy, alongside their mother, father, and brothers Gary and Robbie, all gone. The wealth and global fame the band had built in the mid-70s could never fully repair what those years of pressure had broken. But the music refused to die quietly. In 2014, the classic Not Fragile lineup of Randy Bachman, Fred Turner, Robbie Bachman, and Blair Thornton set aside decades of bitterness for one final night. They took the stage together at the Canadian Music Hall of Fame induction ceremony and played Takin Care of Business one more time, delivering a powerful emotional tribute to the working class engine they had built together 40 years earlier in the cold garages of Winnipeg. For a few minutes that night, none of the lawsuits or the silence or the decades of distance seemed to matter. What mattered was the riff, the piano, and the four men who had once turned a rejected song about a 9-to-5 grind into one of the most enduring anthems in American rock history. The song that made them legends never stopped playing. It simply outlived the band that gave it life. Bachman-Turner Overdrive proved a working-class anthem could conquer the world, but the machine that success built eventually consumed the family that created it. Randy Bachman walked away from his own creation, and the brothers he left behind spent decades fighting over what remained. The song still plays everywhere. The band that wrote it never fully recovered. What's your memory of this song? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories of rock's golden era.